Hello and welcome. My name is Chloe Johnson, and this is my controversial project on race-based discipline. Please excuse me for going quickly, but I have tried many times to get this as short as possible, so I'm going to try even harder this time. Okay, so the controversial topic of utilizing race-based discipline has been met with supporters and opposers on both sides. The Obama administration found that after a 2014 analysis of school discipline data was collected, after 30 years of research by the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, found that African American students were overrepresented among students who receive exclusionary discipline across the country. In efforts to change this tendency in schools, Obama started up the Project STAR, or Student Teacher Achievement Ratio. This was a result of a series of data given after this 30-year-old project. And the project, or the test results, came out of the random assignment of students and teachers to specific classrooms, ranging from small and to large classrooms, one with 2 teachers and one with 1 teacher. After taking that data and focusing on the Caucasian and African American students being compared or matched to same or different race teachers, it showed that while 2/3 of the students were Caucasian and 1/3 African American, of the African American students, 94% of them were in Caucasian teacher classes, while only 45% of them were in African American teacher classrooms. This also showed a difference in achievement comparably to same race as same gender matches, such as the math and reading scores were higher. Of these results, indication of a lowering of suspensions and raising of scores was prominent. As you can see in the data here, it is not from the test that I'm talking about, but it has the exact same result ratios that I'm talking about. So since the lowering of suspensions and raisings of math and reading scores achievement was so prominent, another study was done by Claude M. Steele at Stanford University. And he spoke of the stereotype threat, as that students perceive that a stereotype regarding their ability will come into play in situations of having different race teacher. The test proved that when students were assured that their tests were unrelated to ability, students, both African American and Caucasian students, performed the same. It was only when Black students were told that the test was indicative of their ability, or if they were questioned about their race, that the students performed relatively worse than their Caucasian peers. This data shows us that students are very much aware of the stereotypes that could be imposed upon them in different environments. So, a number of tests have developed this idea of connecting between the disparity of race representation in expulsions in schools as much as incarcerations in prisons as the school-to-prison pipeline theory. So this explains how detentions, suspensions, and expulsions of African American students ultimately lead to the overrepresentation in prisons as well. So 2 years after the Obama administration had started up the STAR project, during the presidential campaign, Hillary Clinton also pledged $2 billion to go towards supporting schools in adding counselors and reducing suspensions. Excuse me. Her thoughts on the issue were clear in her address to a Harlem audience in February 2016. This is not just an education issue. This is a civil rights issue, and we cannot ignore it any longer. Theories behind the pipeline problem give light to a number of possible contributing factors. Teachers' race could influence whether students experience exclusionary discipline. In keeping with the data, some believe that it could be prevented if students were put with same-race teachers. the students could possibly have better rapport with same-race teachers as well as be less likely to act up in class. There is also another possible factor dealing with teachers tending to be more lenient to students of their same race. Excuse me. Another theory about same-race teacher-student relationships is that African American teachers might very well have more effective classroom management practices than Caucasian teachers, which allows them to be better able to influence misbehaving students into exhibiting better behavior. These theories have been tested in a number of states. Evidence from a study done in the schools of Tennessee shows that African American students are less likely to be removed from school when they and their teachers share the same race. It also shows signs of students learning more from their teachers when they are of the same race. The results suggest that racial dynamic of school districts in general continue to contribute to the racial gap in that 70% of students in Tennessee are African American, while only 8% of teachers in Tennessee are African American. Some ideas that came from this data implies that a possibility of minority teachers giving more attention, being more generous to minority students. It can show up as devoting more time and effort in supporting them in the classroom, and even making more favorable assumptions about their capabilities. This is also relevant to Caucasian teachers with the same race students in their classrooms. So this goes on both sides of the flip coin, as is one race is to the other race. So this tendency, this implicit bias that we're getting into now. Excuse me. Sorry. Theories that support this idea is that students perform better when matched with same-race teachers also discuss the possibility that students may trust and respect someone more when they have similar characteristics. This would in fact allow students to open up more and in turn learn easier. Other positive ideas include that same-race matches serve the student in effective role models, which boosts their confidence and enthusiasm for learning. In a test done in North Carolina between the years of 2000 and 2013, the data show that there was a problem of racial disparity not only in the race of teachers, but also in the racial overrepresentation of suspensions, expulsions, and even special education referrals. This test looked at not only this test looked at disciplinary records for all public schools, but limited the samples to only African American students and teachers compared to Caucasian students and teachers. It also broke it down further into gender matches. So the total of 4 groups being African American male, African American female, Caucasian male, and Caucasian female teachers compared to those students. Having the largest population group as African American male students being excluded from classes and referred to special education, the risk in order from highest to lowest of suspensions and expulsions goes as this. African American male students have a 16% chance of being expelled if paired with a Caucasian female teacher, a 14% chance with African American female teacher, a 15% chance with Caucasian male teacher, and a 13% chance of expulsions being expelled with African American male teacher. These theories and ideas follow along the lines of teachers having an implied bias. As we've known from the stereotype threat test that was done, students are just as aware of the stereotype being implied upon them, and that affects their ability to perform on tests, as well as it is apparent in teachers' implicit racial bias. So this implicit or implied bias, implicit racial bias, or unconscious bias towards students of the same race is based on the assumptions about how race most definitely influences teachers' and students' behavior in the classroom setting. The idea behind if you see the teacher as excuse me, if you see the teacher as your mother or somebody that is relatable to you, then you will listen better and perform better in class. Implied bias is something we as human beings are normally not aware of or conscious of. One would hopefully want to say that, oh, I don't have an implied racial bias, but this is actually unfortunately wrong. So here I enter a challenge for you in this project, in that I would like to ask you to take the implied bias test on Harvard's website. I will put it in my essay, and I will actually tell you here now. I will just put it on here quickly. It is implicit.harvard. Oh, excuse me. implicit.harvard.edu. Okay. implicit.harvard.edu. Go here, and there are a number of different implicit bias tests that you can take, not only with the African American Caucasian race, but also with a lot of other ideas. Excuse me. So this doesn't necessarily, if you go and take this test and you find that you have a bias, it doesn't make you a bad person. This is just a step in us being more aware of this. I also took the test, and I also found that I had a bias against other things that I wasn't aware and did not want to have. And you will most likely find this in yourself. And this is not to say that there's anything wrong with you at all. It's just to say that this is something that we as the human race should probably be a little more aware of. Our daily habits, our daily thoughts, our daily ideas, assumptions, interactions, responses to other people, other stimuli in our environment. Is it on autopilot? Are we just action reaction, or are we actually taking conscious awareness and thought into why we're responding this way and what other possibilities we could have in responding to things in our environment? So this is just a part of being human, and so we'll get into the study now. The study in 1979 opened up this implicit bias idea in that Mary Lee Taylor asked Caucasian teachers to teach a lesson in an environment where they could not directly observe the student. Teachers provided less coaching and briefer, less positive feedback when told beforehand that they were teaching a student that was African American. And although our society has made changes since then, more recent studies that are more applicable to today's schools actually still shows that this issue is still apparent. Racial disparities and suspensions begin as early as preschool. African American students comprise an 18% of enrollment in schools, yet 48% of that population are experiencing one or more suspensions. This, according to the Office of Civil Rights, has only grown into a larger gap between the two races between 1989 and 2010. The Office of Civil Rights, as well as other political platforms, have made changes in hopes of correcting this problem in the public school system. So some alternative practices to this. Through reliable and peer-reviewed research, even though these practices have risen, there still is other research that needs to be done. The problem is still not over. There are still issues in racial disparity. So some would believe. So some ideas behind some practices in program-based intervention is RTI, SWPBIS, as a systems approach in a school-wide level or in a district level, MTP, and also other trainings with SROs. All of these program-based interventions have shown a great amount of benefit in reducing the number of suspensions and expulsions so far. Other policy-based interventions of targeted policies such as early warning indicator systems, district-wide level policies with a direct approach in reducing exclusionary discipline continues to make a difference. School-level policy